Hey y'all, I'm Jessica Lilly, and I wanted to take a few minutes to show you how I set up a large board for a larger sized painting. I have a 16 by 20 painting set up to go here, and so what I've got are my board. I use masonite boards, which is the color of all my backgrounds and everything. I use masonite boards to back everything on, and you can see here that it's just a standard masonite board. It's a very sturdy, and I have a thinner paper here. For me, that's a 140 pound, which is like maybe a standard watercolor paper thickness. Sometimes if I'm doing large, I'll do a heavier weight paper, but I do that more with portraits and less with large botanicals, which is what I'm gearing up to do here. So what I'll do is I'll take my board, and you can see my paper's a little bit smaller. And there are a lot of different ways that people do this, but my way is maybe the simplest way. And there are pros and cons to doing it all the various ways, but my way is just to tape this to the board dry. And I just use masking tape, but let me show you what kind. So the masking tape that I use matters which kind you use. This is the Duck Professional, and you can see it says Professional on the inside. It's a contractor grade tape, and it's got a stronger tack, which isn't going to tear your paper as long as your paper can handle tape. Papers will get torn if they're too soft for tape. Fluid 100 is too soft for tape. The Be Creative papers are too soft for tape, but this is a Fabriano Artistico, and this is not too soft for tape, and it can take any old tape. Arches can take tape. Saunders can take tape. So I use this kind of tape as my favorite. Also, the Scotch 2020 is a good bet. And what I'll do is tape on all four edges. I also use this thick tape. The grabbiness of it gives a lot of place for it to hold on to that paper and really pull it taut so that it's really taut on my board. Other ways that people do this that you might see are some people will wet their paper first and then staple it down to a more permeable board than this, like a piece of gator board. And some people will wet their paper and they'll tape it down with paper tape, the kind that you have to get wet first. Both of those will give you a little bit of a firmer pull, and your paper will probably dry a little bit more straight than it will the way that I'm showing you. But as I go, when I do big washes, I'll use my hairdryer or something hot to dry them as soon as they're dry enough to not smear the paint around. And that causes the paper to shrink. And when the paper shrinks in that context, it doesn't really fold or bow or bend or anything like that for me. So I don't have too much of an issue with it doing it this way, or any issue really. Famous last words. But so I do it this way, and those are kind of some of the main ways that I've heard of. And let me show you how I get this paper taped onto the board. So I pulled off a nice long strip of this thick Duck Professional, and I'm going to eyeball it, but I'm aiming to, my paper is bigger than my piece is going to be by about 1 inch on each side. So I'm eyeballing a little shy of 1 inch, and you may want to measure this. I feel pretty confident about my ability to guess and to get that edge close enough to being right for me. So I will overlap by 1 inch and wrap it around the back of my paper, and you can see that it's really tight on there. You can also see that I burnished it a little bit as I went down, and I'm going to do that on the other 4 sides so that they're all 4 completely taped down, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I am taped and burnished with my hands on all 4 sides. The next thing that I want to do is double check and make sure that my interior space inside of my tape matches the standard size that I want my painting to be. So I want my painting to be 16 by 20. So my interior needs to be no smaller than 16 by 20, but it can be bigger. So this is about 20.5 inches across, which is fine. When the frame comes in, it'll give us a little bit extra space there. And moving this way, I am at 16.5 roughly. So I'm at roughly 16.5 by 20.5, which gives me a little bit of extra space later down the road. Okay, so I know my size is good. I have my board on all 4 sides. And the last step that I want to do is double tape my edges. So I'm going to pull off some of my tape. So I have pulled off 4 little pieces of tape to double tape my edges, and I want to double seal those seams closed where it's the most vulnerable. And the place where it's the most vulnerable is at the corners between each area. So if you can see here, this is overlapping on top of this. And so this is the entry point where water can seep in as if the wash gets really wet. And so this is where I want to close off that gap. And I want to do that on all 4 sides. And the way that I do that is I take my piece that I cut off of the same tape and I make sure that I cross over it so that it's covering that open seam. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, all 4 sides are done. So the last thing that I'll want to do is I'll just go through and I'll burnish it again to really make sure that that edge is super, super sealed all the way around my paper, so that when I paint and those washes get really wet, this will hold and water will be less likely to seep under the edges. My goal or my hope is that there's no water under the edges. So we want that to be a nice and firm seal. And there you have it. So this is a 16 by 20, and let me show you one I already have prepped for an 11 by 14. And you can see that I'm not using the exact same style of board. It's still a masonite board, but this is a drawing board. It has a drawing clip on it and everything. But I just tape it onto the main center part of the board, and I did the exact same thing. I've got double taped edges. We've got the thick tape all the way around. And now I have 2 papers ready to go for some big botanicals. Have a good day, guys.